Hey everyone, welcome back to Contractor Growth Network. I'm Logan Shinholster, and today, instead of being joined by Chris, I'm here with Devon Tilly, who runs another contractor-specific podcast. It's an awesome one. The way that I was talking to him about it, it's like the Tim Ferriss of the contractor world, where he talks to a lot of the big dogs, and he's actually able to pull out what they do and apply it to his own business, which it's a window and door business, which is it's awesome to hear how you can actually take it and put it into practice. So, Devon Tilly, thanks for joining me, man.
Awesome. Thanks for the intro. What I got a lot of big shoes to fill. Hopefully we can do this in the 4-hour work week, because I never figured that part out, man.
Yeah, we'll start jumping into keto and microdosing if we're really going to go for the Tim Ferriss route.
Yeah. No ice baths for me. That's stuff.
Well, cool, man. Well, Devon, I appreciate you hopping on this. Can you give us a rundown of both like Mountain View, but then also AOC, just so everybody knows who you are, where you're coming from, who's Devon, just to give a good background?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I love coming out to be on other platforms, because the art of construction, from first episode, we just recorded 200 and whatever, has always been for whoever I interview, right? So the art of construction tribe has been built from the beginning for truly that. So I'm like a lot of people that I've interviewed, where I grew up in the construction industry, where my stepfather raised me, was my boss's boss in the corporate world of supply chain. So I've been in the art of construction my whole career, and I'm passionate about building materials. And in 2012, was on a podcast called The Shays Lounge. A buddy of mine, Nick May, who's a big podcaster, I was hooked. I said, will you help me start it? So in 2012, before podcasting was the cool in thing, the art of construction was born. I did the first 50 episodes for myself, meaning when I say for myself, I did everything myself, soup to nuts, the editing, all the work. Because when I tell people this, they're like, what do you mean? Now you're on the stage news. And I was deathly afraid of public speaking. Like, I grew up, I loved the one-to-one of talking, the art of construction. And so I've kind of come up with this name of the Tasmanian Devon now. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I fight straight through it. And the art of construction is for contractors and its affiliates. And that its affiliates is a key word, right? Especially as what we do is to connect the right construction technologies to the right products, to the right handshakes. And that's where my local window and door company kicks in, is because we take the global megaphone and then we go practice it. And that's what I love when I get to meet other influencers, to where they actually live it, right? So they go out and do it and learn from others. And I'm a lifelong learner. My motto is elevate and delegate and always be marketing. So that's me, my man. Thanks for having me and letting me share your stage.
Yeah, man. So, which would you like to talk about first, the window and door company or art of construction podcast?
Well, I think a lot of people have some aha moments and they say, maybe I'm thinking about doing something. And why I did it is I always talk about marketing outside the box, right? And I alluded about how I didn't have time to go. I was trying to run a business, right? So I didn't have time to go out and do all this working on the business, in the business like I wanted to. So I just started that to do both, right? And that worked for me, right? So you got to find what works for you to figure that out. So to talk about that is like, my window and door company I was comfortable with. The art of construction I wasn't comfortable at all. And it put the two together, right? So that worked for me. And that's what you got to figure out, what works for you, because it's all about your story in today's world of fast moving. You got to get somebody to stop and pause and then be part of the tribe.
So let me ask you this: with a window and door company, like a lot of who I work with are more on the artist side of things. It's my big three are remodelers, painters, and landscapers, right? And especially with remodeling and landscaping, it's not really like landscape maintenance. It's more outdoor kitchens, water features, stuff that your backyard now becomes the destination. So I hear from them, because that's what I'm so used to. Well, I do this because I essentially get to create art in somebody's home, in somebody's backyard. So I understand that, because that's the world that I live in. What drives you to want to start a window and door company? I mean, is there a certain sense of artistry there as well, or is it a different pull for you?
So I've been in supply chain my whole career, and came out of college with my marketing degree. And one of my first mentors was like, Well, we were supplying everything. So I was a distribution center, door shop, and we had all rails cars. So all the product would come in, and we had 28 lumber yards through 4 states that we would distribute stuff to. And he said, Devon, there's two things that will make or break a construction project. I'm like, I'm intrigued about that because I don't really know,
Mm-hmm.
right? And he said, a great foundation and the right windows and doors at the right time. I'm like, I wasn't sexy foundation, whatever. So it's like, tell me more about windows and doors, right?
Right.
And at the time, it was fascinating for me because this was in 2003. And I was right out of college, and I helped develop some of the first made to order programs that help you be able to take the complexities and build from those foundational elements
Mm-hmm.
instead of just faxing in your window order and doing the same thing over and over again. And so I had the pleasure of going to 28 lumber yards, my boss's boss, and now is part of my window and door company today. And I'd go around and they'd be like, why would I not just fax in the order? And I'm like, well, because then if you fax in the order, you're relying on somebody else. Don't you want to be able to take this software and be able to sell something different, or
Mm-hmm.
these displays we just put out there, like to know about them? And I spent 4 years, like people just didn't even want to get out of their desk. They just literally just fax, like a fax machine. You know what a fax machine is?
It's funny. So I got in the mail. I got one of those promos, like a pen trying to sell me. People trying to give me the promotional stuff, and it had somehow my parents' secondary phone line growing up, and I had one of the guys that works with me, my video guy, who's probably honestly going to be listening to this and editing this. I was like, do me a favor, call this number, and it was the dial tone number, like the connecting to the internet, and I was like, do you know what that is? Because he's 22, and he was like, no, I have no idea what this noise is. So it was because it was calling into the fax, and because he's 22, had no idea, never had to dial into the internet. But
That's where, yeah, I get that digital transformation, right? And
right.
words like computational design and offsite construction, all these, like, to the people that are running the art of construction today, those are buzzwords. But the artists and the people you're talking about that are out doing the work, they've been doing this not for a couple years now. A lot of people like me, who is a digital immigrant, as my marketing team is telling the Tasmanian Devon, they're digital natives. So they've been in technology their whole life. And that's where I become this kind of influencer in between, right? So I grew up with crusty contractor, who we joke about, who doesn't want to change. But then these digital natives that are scared to actually go out on the job site and actually do the work, right? So that's where it has to meet, right? That's the art of construction. Like, you have to actually know what a P&L is. You actually have to market some historical traditional ways and the new ways, and put that analog and digital together, because the smartphone changed the world. On every podcast, for the first episode of the 200 whatever, at the end of it, I say, what is your magic wand for connecting technology to handshakes? And so I asked that, and it boils down around something around a tool, but the tool is something around your smartphone. And now we're loaded up with so many tools that we don't even know what tool we're supposed to be using. And half the people you're talking about doing their fountains in the backyard just want to go be artists. But it's the of construction to make the art work, right? So that's what the art of construction is all about. And the long answer to your question is windows and doors are a foundational, a structural, but they're also that beauty element, right? I call the hood ornament of the project the front door, right? There's so much psychology around that. But building materials have went a lot of different directions within the art of construction. So that's how the two come together.
So what was it like for you? And you opened up Mountain View, you said in 2002, 2003?
2012, I bought an existing window and
okay.
door company, and had worked for 3 others before that. Started in the corporate world, then a mom and pop, and then I went to work for the owner that I bought out. So, which was the great way to learn the business of windows, right? Of actually working for corporate America, finding out I'm an entrepreneur at heart. It didn't work for me, so you got to find your why. Then you got to go out and figure out how you're going to make that work. And that's where I'm working for others. But the whole time I went to school for marketing and loved business plans and trying and failing. So the whole way through, I've always been running all these practices and figuring them out and just learning every day to figure that out.
What was it like for you going from the corporate side of things, where there's a lot of quote unquote redundancies and a rhyme or reason for things, over to mom and pop, where they're trying to just figure it out?
Yeah, it was an interesting journey that if I boiled it down into a short conversation, is be, boy, was I arrogant about how I thought I knew everything. Because I was that punk out of college that would just come out and challenge the status quo. Now you do that full circle where I'm the owner on the other side. A lot of that stuff, I wish I would have just shut up and listened a little bit more, but it also helped me cut my teeth, right? So I didn't fit into a box very well because I'm always about trying new things. And I say the only constant is change. And in corporate, they like to buy companies just to take that lion's share and just keep the same things. So it's blending that, right?
So you go from some large corporate to now, mom and pop, and you learn essentially how it works in the big dogs. Because like for me, my girlfriend works corporate America. She works for Wells Fargo, like banking. So, and then me owning, starting my own company. She's been with me for this whole journey. We have two very different approaches to everything. She's very, well, you have to do this, check boxes for that, everything. And then for me, it's like, okay, how do I make sure I don't fly by the seat of my pants? So when you actually open up your own company working for both the big dogs, but also the mom and pop, where you're essentially wearing a lot of different hats, what was some of the things that you wanted to make sure that you took from both of those first two experiences and put into place in your own company?
Yeah, it's the gas and the brakes syndrome, right? I think that's what
Mm-hmm.
that's what we're talking about here, right? Because if in the entrepreneur you want to experiment and try new things, if that's what you want to be, right? But you can only
Right.
try so many different things because you don't have the funding like you do in the corporate side of things.
Mm-hmm.
So it's blending that, right? And so you got to find your right partners is key, right? So if you're going to be the person that wants to take risks, and I'm the kid growing up where they said I sell the ice to the Eskimos and I love, getting after it, right? But I had to have people that were the brakes, and that's my wife, right? So for the first 5 years, I say I made the bills and she paid the bills, but we had a plan that we put out there of, my philosophies, art of construction. I started it reading about how did Elon Musk take what was been out for a long time, rockets and batteries, and turned it into a global phenomenon. How did he
Mm-hmm.
do that, right? And it boiled down to, when I did all his reading, is like, what should it be 10 years from now? And I was like, wow, that really resonated to me, because the days are long and the years are short, right? So our 6-year-old daughter, I looks like yesterday, right? But boy, there's
Mm-hmm.
some long days there, just like owning a business. So my wife and I said, for the first 5 years, I'm going to go out and take some risks, but she's in orthopedic surgery and she's, the gas and the brake. So you got to find that yin and the yang is when you're going to go make those risks or those plunges. And the
Mm-hmm.
art of construction was my hobby that I said, what do I want the construction industry to be 10 years from now? And so I was like a lot of people that grew up to it, that we need so much change, but we need to have open voices to drive those change. So for the first 5 years was to build the tribe, which we've done that. We just hit 500,000 listens on the art of construction. Now the next
Nice.
5 years, we're now building up different ways. So we have a whole architectural division. We're focused on blending on-site and off-site construction for the whole tribe and taking many people that have been on the podcast. Now we have a whole team of architects for Pan Golf Tech in India, and we're working with a world platform with my little window, and all started from my little window and door company.
So you're talking about doing this on like a global scale, but what have you learned, just by interviewing a lot of people within the industry that are essentially subject matter experts in their own right? How do you take that and then actually apply it to your own business there? I mean, like, because we all consume, 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 but the battle is how do we actually take that and implement versus just listening in one ear and letting it go out the other?
Yeah, and that's where I just fell in love with podcasting, in addition to Audible and other tools, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you gotta find a way to make it work for you to get it, for you to resonate, for you to work with that, right? So one of the keys for whoever I interview is they need to be a lifelong learner to interview them on the podcast. And what I mean
Mm-hmm.
by that is they actually want to learn, and they the go giver philosophies that the Art of Construction tribe goes after, because you have to be able to take a couple golden nuggets, but if you're just living your life by the cliff notes of others, you're not going to get anywhere. So you got to go,
Mm-hmm.
there's no secret recipe. You got to go do the work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, we just interviewed Steve Burrows for the second time, who did, like the engineering for the Beijing Olympics Webb Stadium and the Apple and all kinds of really cool projects. And he talks about how it's the greatest time to be alive in construction, if you really think about all of these digital tools with the analog, the people that are really working on both of those things, it's fascinating how it's actually coming together. So that's where I'm at on the whole thing.
And where do you see the future of it? I mean, I know you're talking about like going into other ventures. I guess how do you take what you've been doing for 5 years now and then progressing it even more? Because you're talking about this whole lifelong learning aspect of it. I guess what's next for you with all of it?
Yeah, it's being able to do a sprint and a marathon at the same time, right? So you have to have, I call it the full life perspective. So it's a whole program. One of my mentors, my father-in-law, was a college professor and business coach, and he derived a tool on one piece of paper called the time relationship chart. And you lay it out how your whole life's going to go. And of course, that's not how your life actually goes, right? But you build this marathon out of how you want it to go. And then you know what? If you lay something on how you want it to go, guess what happens? It starts going that way, right? And then you have to have these sprints from within to say, wow, like right now, if you're not paying attention to computational design and companies like Autodesk or these 800-pound gorillas that are really taking, the modeling and technology to the next level, you're going to be left in the dirt, right? So you better be paying attention to that stuff if this is your marathon. But you could sprint right now with a bunch of technology, but pretty soon there's going to be another bubble again, and that's going to break because you may be too late, because those sprints can change on a dime, like the latest Bitcoin this or whatever that. So be careful how many sprints you invest in within the marathon.
So what you're talking about with some of this stuff is it feels like this is really appropriate for a large company that, maybe they have 50 employees and they have the resources or the time to invest in this sort of technology. But for the day-to-day contractor, that's maybe just them or them in a small crew, they're doing their best to make sure that they're getting by, they're able to make payroll. I guess, how do you apply a lot of what you hear on AOC to the smaller companies?
Yeah, the statement I use for the solopreneurs is you got to really efficiently run between the raindrops. So you're talking about the raindrops that the 50-person company could just come down and smack you, right? If you're trying to compete against them. So you have to run between that, right? And then you got to find really good partners. So I highly advise everybody to build out a personal board of directors and an advisory council. And the advisory council is very different than your personal board of directors. The personal board of directors is when you're off, they're going to help you get yourself right. But the advisory council are people that do what you do and want to go where you want to go, that are similar minded, right? So I run one for window dealers all throughout the country. We have non-competing window dealers, and it's so fun to have that advisory council. But I also have that personal board of directors to really make sure you're in the right space. So that's what I would think is key for someone to get those right partnerships and people that can help you check along the way, especially if you're the one-man band.
And when you're talking about like a personal, is that like could be your spouse, could be your father-in-law?
Right. So there's 4 people on that, and I've mentioned multiple on this call, right? So you got to be careful who your personal and your business partners are and how you mix those.
Interesting. So because it's funny, because that's one of those things, like I do a very good job personally of mingling and having like other contractor specific marketing owners, company owners that we talk to. What's working for you? What are you seeing? Where do you want to get to? And we're great at that. But when it comes to the personal side of things, like I've been in business for 3.5, almost 4 years now. And for the first essentially 2.5 years, it was let's grow at all costs. We're going to sacrifice anybody or anything. Oh, if that's a fun event on a Friday night, can't do it because I've got work along this journey. So to actually step back into that initial, back in 2017, hey, stop me if I'm going over the line of I'm skipping this fun event because I think I got to work an extra hour. I mean, that would do a lot for me. So to have that personal side would probably be unbelievably helpful.
Yeah, and say it's okay right now. If you make the compromise to make it work, it's hard starting a business.
Yeah.
Whoever says it's easy is full of shit, right? Like that's just not how it works. Like, so you have to put in the time to make it work, because most businesses don't make it work. It's the ones that hustle harder usually do, but they also have people that gut check them, right, personally and business. And I found there's a lot of they end up getting really tied together after you find other lifelong learners or wherever your core values are that are similar minded. So that advisory council becomes your secondary, personal counsel. And you have to really get out. COVID has challenged the world big time, right? We're sick at these computer screens because it's a different thing than when you're sitting at a happy hour after a training course or whatever makes you work. Like we're missing that, right? So we're all excited to get back, and I'm excited to get back and do events like that. That Art of Construction loves being part of that stuff because it blends all the key ingredients together of working on the business and in the business.
So what are some of the big things that you've learned from actually talking to people on the podcast that you've actually been able to apply within your own business?
Well, I've done hundreds and hundreds of podcasts, so that's a lot of it, right? So there's a lot of chapters to that book. So my cheesy answer would be go listen to it and find out, listen just like I did, right? But it's so many different things. It's things that I don't even know what the words mean sometimes when my team puts them on there. Like an example would be, I didn't even know what the word biomimicry was. And I'm not scared to say that, right? So if I don't know what that is, I'll ask the question, right? And then I'll learn like the strongest glass composition came from a shell at the bottom of the ocean, which is learning from the earth, from the world of how to put biomimicry together. And I'm like, Velcro came from a dog and how it was stuck in the dog. And that's how and you hear these stories from people like that and you're just like, wow. And I tell you, that one comes to mind because you get out of what you think. You're jaded by what you think you know, and you don't know what you don't know, right? And you have to put yourself in a place to just sometimes hit you sideways to say you don't know a lot and you have a lot to learn. And that's a good thing.
Could you spell biomimicry if you had to?
I'm not very good at spelling either. I
love it. Yeah, because because we hear a lot of this stuff on these podcasts and it's just now, what do we actually do with it? So for you, I'm going to venture to guess that a lot of it is just expanding the mindset around you don't know everything. You aren't, you're not super special where you come out of the womb already knowing everything about business. There's so much more out there for you that you don't know what you just don't know.
Right. And the more you actually learn, the more you realize how little you do know. And that just makes you that much stronger, right? And then other people want to gravitate to you because now you do know a few more things, but you're saying how much more you need to learn and how much more you need to know, because construction is one of those industries that it's just, there isn't a book that you just read that is so simple, right? It's ever changing, and each type of construction is so different. I think that's the big change, though, with technology is going to truly, the Amazon effect, if you will, on construction is going to change the game.
Well, how do you see that playing out? I mean, like, how do you see everything with the 2-day shipping and the speed and what Amazon's doing? How do you see that actually turning into, or transitioning into what the construction industry is doing?
So the way to answer that is that the word speed was just a different word before Amazon, right? And so value is my big word now, along with the speed. And so Amazon just changed the game, right? In good ways in a lot of ways, and bad ways in a lot of ways, like everything, right? So the only constant is change, but you have to now be able to, the next buyer is thinking differently. So if I heard you right, a lot of your clients are that homeowner in their backyard, but they go order all the stuff on Amazon and think you're going to go get the permit and do it all the same way that they're doing that. So it's these mindsets, you have to really change that mindset, and it boils down to education is what it boils down to, in my opinion. Really putting yourself out there to say you don't know everything, and it's not going to go perfect. The people that begin with the end in mind are going to be much more successful in this speed world, because it's not that way, right? And if you pretend, that you're going to just eat your lunch, right?
So do you think at this point then the construction industry is more of a younger person's game? Somebody that has, like me, I'm 29, right? Like I'm used to Amazon being around, but my dad, who's 64, Amazon's a brand new thing essentially. So is it the younger guys are going to win out?
I try to say not an age thing. To me, it's truly that digital immigrant and digital native being able to understand where you can each add value to each other, right? So you said, that's where I would highly advise you to go, like, say you don't know the people that have been around, right? And on vice versa, the people that have been around saying, the digital game's not my thing. Like, the people that are doing that are running really, really cool businesses, because, there's just a lot of value in, you learn by doing. I tell the story, here in Denver, and I moved here from North Dakota, and I become a Colorado fan of all the sports teams, but I just thought it was amazing how John Elway got Peyton Manning and they won the Super Bowl. Like, that's what happens. I was like, well, no, it was Peyton Manning that knew how to do audibles and had put in the 10,000 hours and came in, and one person made that work. But the team won the Super Bowl, right? That's where you got to go find that person that is put in the work, and then now you go blend that with where construction is going. That's a key ingredient right now in this digital transformation.
Yeah, it's funny. My cousin works for a commercial construction company, and he was saying that you've got the people that come out of college and they're young, they're 22, and they know how to operate technology, and they come out with this mindset of, well, this is how it's going to be done. And you've got the actual, more so like project managers who are 55 that refuse to use an iPad, but they know exactly what's going to happen because they've been doing it for 35 years. So he was telling me, like, it's a bit of a humble process on both ends, where one person has to let their ego down to say, look, I don't know how to use technology, but I'm willing to learn, or at least facilitate it. And on the other side, it's I can use an iPad, no problem, but I don't actually know what I'm doing outside of just what I've learned in college. So he was telling me about, like, the actual give and take and how that company progresses it, because they're a pretty large company. But he's saying it was just like you're bringing in essentially a new wave of people, and if you don't adapt to that, you're just going to be stuck with 55-year-olds that are going to retire in 5-10 years, and then now what?
Right. So you got to get over the F word.
So
the F word is fear. The young bucks have to be able to excited to go step up to Krusty Contractor on the job site. And Krusty Contractor has to be able to get out of the way to let someone else teach him how to use this iPad or whatever tool that is actually part of that, versus both sides too scared to step out, right? And the ones that are doing it are going to drive the change on both sides. And there's going to be there's all kinds of cool new positions coming out of that, right? Because that's an interesting person that is excited to go challenge the status quo with the technology, but yet not scared enough to make those changes, and vice versa. So same with blending on-site and off-site construction, all kinds of stitching companies. Somebody still has to go do the work, right? You can only do so many video games and make money off video games until you actually have to go build it, right?
So when you keep saying off-site construction, what do you mean by that specifically?
Yeah, so that's kind of the catch-all word of modular is not the sexy word, because modular think people of trailer wide in that. So offsite construction is the new word, or above that all is system built. So we did a whole podcast series, 20 podcasts with different influencers, people that have been in modular for a long time and people who are brand new. And like we've been talking about on this show here, right? A blending system build, meaning panelization, shoe boxes of modular, but blending those items with on-site, meaning sticks and bricks. You're building that on-site, putting the two together. And right now it's just being done on a few big, large scale, but it's coming to where everybody down to your artist, it's truly getting the artist back to being artists instead of having to do all these extra stuff that is not truly art. Like, how do you make something repeatable? No project should start from a blank slate. But how do you still make the art of construction work? That's what I mean by off-site and on-site construction.
So it's funny because that's something that, a lot of people that I work with, that's where I try to, hey, look, if you were trying to reinvent the wheel every single time, how do you ever scale? How do you grow? Because you can never get out of the business. But they lean into it and say, well, because it's custom, they're paying for me. This is why they hire me. So for you, coming from your background, you're a big systems guy, it sounds like, and correct me if I'm off, how would you approach that with somebody? Like, is there room for a lot of customization, or is it really, if you want to grow to these levels that you're talking about, you really have to figure out a repeatable, scalable system?
Yeah, they just have to get out of their own way. Like if your business is you, then you are the business, right? So the Mack truck roll will eat your lunch tomorrow if when something happens. It's not if, it's when, right? So yes, I'm a repeatable process guy. To back to the time relationship chart of like, what do you want to get out of your life? And you'll find out that two things you don't have enough of is time and money most of the time if you're just a one-man band.
So if that's in your DNA, it really sounds like windows and doors is going to be right up your alley, because how much customization is there in windows and doors for the most part?
Well, it depends on what kind of construction project or process you're going under, right? But we're back to the offsite. We're working with several modular plants because I own a window and door dealership. Well, that model may be changing rapidly if the manufacturers are just going to sell to the modular plants. That could change. So you have to be able to be nimble and run between the raindrops, as I said.
How did you get into this whole supply chain world? Like, was it always in you, or did you just like one day get introduced to it? I guess kind of walk me through that, because that's literally the opposite of every single person listening to this podcast right now.
Yeah, so supply chain was so when I talk about my boss's boss was my stepfather that raised me. That's what he did his whole career, and we had a large family, and we'd move around, and he kept moving up, and he would manage lumber yards and then district managers, and he'd manage stuff. And I was always fascinated when we'd fix up houses of like what stuff and how that would all work. And so out of college, that's where I got this marketing degree and got this job where we took all, train cars and all this stuff, and then we'd put it on semis and bring it to lumber yards to go to the trucks. And I was just fascinated of that process, but also frustrated by the process, because what products would go here and there, a lot of it would not necessarily the best products. It was back to, the ivory tower saying this was the deal we got, right? So I loved that it can be repeatable, but it's back to the educating of really what are you getting? What are you getting what you pay for? So I've always been fascinated by that. And cool projects, are yielded from cool products.
Right. Interesting. Yeah, because it's funny, because like I would say 90% of people that I talk to, they come from the background of, well, my dad was a contractor, or I always grew up, building with my hands. And then the other 10% are those, look, I'm a business person. I don't actually know how to do this stuff myself. I don't know how to remodel a kitchen. I'm not really much of a painter, but I'm coming in with the sales and the marketing background where I've worked in another business or in corporate America. And the way that they approach the company, the 10% are like you, where it's like, what, more the systems, how can we set everything up? While the other 90% is more on like, how many rooms can I paint, because I like painting. So it's cool to hear the difference, but it's a good shift to see how do we take the 90% and at least walk through the systems, the actual processes of it all, and how do you build technology into it all? Because a lot of times everybody, or most people that I talk to, they're working hard, but if you just kind of optimize a little bit, use some technology and streamline it, you can actually like double your company much faster than you think you can, and you don't need to double the crews. You just got to get a little bit more efficient.
Yeah, you got to find your why, and you got to realize that it doesn't matter what you're doing, you're in the people business, right? So I own a window and door company, but I've always been in the people business, using window and doors in our experience centers to build better relationships in the people business, right? If you're in the people business, you have to meet more people to grow your business, right? And if you mentioned painting, if you're just painting 4 rooms every day, it's hard to meet a lot of people, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. You just got to say, would I rather talk to the walls and be a painter, or would I want to talk to people to grow this thing and have other people painting the walls? Both are okay. Like, this is not there's this huge shift to where you have to go to college and you have to do all these things. Like, a lot of people they don't want to do that. Like, so find your why is really the key to this thing.
Yeah, because I think a lot of us, we hear like, or we see online, you should have your business like this, or you should do that. When in reality, you may just want to be a one-man band, and you just do your own thing. You just operate with people you want to operate with, and as long as you're happy, you're happy. But the finding of the why is, it's a tough thing to do. It's tough to sit down and actually like do some introspective thinking into why am I doing what I'm doing, and then from there you can essentially set up your business to serve you. But until you actually figure that end point out, you're just kind of like doing all these at bats hoping that you're going to hit something, but we have no idea what we're swinging at necessarily.
Right.
Fair. Cool, man. Well, Devon, what is one thing that, like, taking away from all this, all the stuff that you've learned, the audience we work with, they're smaller. It sounds like compared to who you're used to talking to, they're maybe 500,000 pushing for the $1 million mark. What's something that in all the learning that you've come away with, what's something that you can tell to them to say, hey, look, here's my one main piece of advice? What would that look like?
And I love those businesses, right? That's those businesses are what makes the art of construction work, right? And so it's what I keep saying over and over again is like, find out what makes you tick and do more of that. Like, and don't overthink it, right? But there's no secret to this thing. Like, you have to work really hard and find all the things to say, how do you get your mind, body, and spirit and everything working? It's not easy, right? But get help. Whether you're going to just paint rooms every day or you want to have 500 people painting rooms for your business, either one of those is there's nothing wrong with either one of those. And that's looking yourself in the mirror and finding what makes me work, and then get the right amount of help. Period.
I love it. Yeah, it's so, because it's serving yourself, not serving what you think other people want out of you. Cool, man. Well, Devon, if you haven't said it enough, how do people find you? What's a good way to connect with you and get more into your world?
Yeah, I'm big on LinkedIn. So Devon Tilly on LinkedIn, or the Art of Construction website. We have message boards and all kinds of platforms there. So, and get out, and I'll be doing the same, and hopefully see you out there. It's been a fun ride, and we're honored to have your team be joining the tribe.
Cool. Devon, thanks very much, man.
All right. Cheers, man.